And we're live. Welcome, everybody. I'm live here with my dear friend Kwame Christian, who is the GOAT.
Thank you. It's good to see you. It's good to be here with the person who has the number one negotiation podcast in the world, Rebecca Zung. So thank you for having me on the stream, my friend.
Thank you. And guess who has the number two negotiation podcast in the world? That would be my dear friend Kwame.
Yes. Yes.
We own negotiation, my friend. Yes, we do. So we were talking a couple weeks ago, and we were thinking, gosh, we were just having a conversation about all things negotiation and just the two of us as friends. And we were going, wow, this is good stuff. We should just do this live and share information with people, and also get people's feedback on what they want, and just, see what we can offer as far as um, information, transformation, empowerment. And so that's what this is all about. And so today we thought we would talk about leverage, the hidden key to freedom, because leverage is so key to not just any negotiation, but just in life. There's just so many, every conversation, every interaction is, you're trying to, and even with your own self, with your own brain, your own mindset, just pull levers so that you can get to that next zone, whatever it is, level that you want to get to. So tell me, Kwame, what you're thinking.
Oh, I love this because again, we hang out when we're chatting and we just vibe. This makes so much sense to just chit chat like this. And I was thinking about it because my relationship to with the concepts of power and leverage have evolved over time. And I started asking folks when I would do these trainings and keynotes, just give them the option. If you had the choice between having all of the negotiation skills in the world, like you're the perfect negotiator, versus having all of the power and leverage in the world, which would you choose? And it really calls into question just the value of negotiation skills. Not that they're not valuable, but it calls into question value of negotiation skills relative to the power of power, right? Because if you're somebody who has ultimate leverage and ultimate power and authority, then you don't need to be very good to get everything that you want. Now, it will lead to detrimental relationships if you wield that power incorrectly. So I'll stipulate to that. But after I started to pay attention to just how influential and pivotal power and leverage are, I started to redesign my life for maximum leverage. Because once I recognized that I could accumulate leverage in a meaningful, authentic type of way, then that's what leads to freedom, because you feel as though fewer people have power over you. And I think it's the feeling of powerlessness that often puts us into inappropriate positions in inappropriate relationships, and we make bad decisions because we feel like we don't have a choice. And the more powerful you feel, the more choices you have and the more in control you are over your life.
Yeah. So let's start off by, I want to ask you, what is your definition of leverage?
Yeah. So for me, when I think about power and leverage, to me, it comes down to influence, but there's a distinction between leverage and power. So with leverage is situational advantage. So you are able to influence the outcome of a negotiation or a discussion because you have situational advantage. And I think that's important because a lot of times people feel powerless when they don't need to, because power, on the other hand, that comes from more official sources. So we have maybe authority based on the hierarchy within an organization. Maybe it's size. If you're negotiating with a multi-billion-dollar company and you're not as big, then they have power from just the amount of sheer size that they have. But you can still have leverage, which is situational advantage that might come from information, opportunities, those type of things too. So when you can understand the distinction, you can realize you can still find a source of influence that is tantamount to power, even though it's not true authoritative like power from a hierarchical source. You can still have a lot of swag at the negotiation table if you know where your leverage lies.
Yeah. I think that's so great. I mean, there's all these different types of leverage. There's situational, resource, financial, even emotional leverage.
Yes.
And I think of leverage as the ability to influence. And it's creating motivation on the other side. It's creating incentive from the other side based upon your position. So it could be skill, it could be situation, it could be relationships, it could be resource, but it's basically creating motivation from the other side to want to be in relationship with whatever it is that you want them to be in relationship with, whether it's a resolution in a negotiation, maybe it's some kind of business relationship, or but it actually comes from the word lever, and we all know that a lever is a tool, right, to help lift people or lift things. And it's traced back to the Latin word levare, meaning to raise or to lift. So I find that really fascinating. And I would love to know where you guys are tuning in from, by the way. Just say hi once you come on in. If you're joining us, welcome, and just say hi, tell us your name and where you're tuning in from, because we want to help you guys. If you have any questions, you have any comments, some people will come to me and they'll say, I have no leverage. They have all the leverage. And I always say, thinking outside the box is really important, because there's so many different kinds of leverage. And so just because you might not have mounds of documentation or something, there it could be an emotional situation. I had a situation one time where I happened to be representing the guy who was a former CEO of a major Fortune 20 company. And hi, Annette from Columbus, Ohio. And this guy, they had been married for a long time, like 30 years or something. And he had always been the one who was the breadwinner and sort of the controller in the relationship. And he thought going into the divorce that he would also have all the power. Well, it turned out that he had a proclivity for hiring sex workers, and he didn't want that to come out. And it turned out that he also had contracted a sexually transmitted disease and passed that along to her, which she had never been unfaithful to him. So she's going to her OBGYN going, where the hell did I get this? And now all of the sudden things changed, and it wasn't money leverage, and it wasn't, power leverage in the way that you might think. Hi, Tiffany from Charleston. It was situational and emotional leverage, because he did not want to be exposed as having this situation. And in Florida, where I was practicing, you can add a claim to your pleading. You can add a tort claim to a divorce pleading, and for assault, battery. These are civil assault claims, civil assault, civil battery. It's not a hitting, but it's a giving of something, an unwanted touch and an unwanted result and impact. And so intentional infliction of emotional distress, all sorts of civil claims. And in Florida, you can then demand a jury trial for the civil claims, and not just having a bench trial, which is just the judge, which is how it normally is for divorce. And so what we did, or what they did, was they were like, okay, they're going to add these claims if he doesn't settle. And so all of a sudden, she now swung it around and had the leverage. And so there's not like she didn't have the power, she didn't have the influence, she didn't have the money, but all of a sudden she had all the leverage.
Yes. Oh, that's such a powerful story. And just a note, I would hate to be up against you in a case like that. My gosh. And it's so funny because it's not just the knowledge of what leverage is, it's also recognizing and understanding who's on the other side. Because what might constitute leverage in one case, in one situation, might not constitute leverage in another case, in another situation. So you also need to understand the person or the situation to recognize how your leverage or your unique knowledge or resources or skills applies directly to them, because your leverage, the quantity and quality of the leverage that you have, is going to be contingent upon how it is received by the other side as well. And that shows we have positive and negative leverage as well. So we have the positive leverage. Hey, I am in a unique position to add something good to your life, so you can give me something. But then we also have negative leverage, which is I have something that I could add to your life that would be bad and make your life worse, right? And with the negative leverage, we have to be careful with the way that we wield it. In your example, it is already a toxic kind of combative type of situation, so we can wield that pretty safely.
Right.
It is a threat because we are already at that point. But then when you're having conversations where we are not at war, then we have to be very mindful of how we utilize the negative leverage too. But usually it becomes very clear once we are already at that point of combat. Now we're willing to let that fly.
Yes. Hi, Sherry from South Africa. We got people from all over the world here. Yeah, so I think it's important to understand what's motivating and incentivizing the other side. So how would one do that because some people know and some people don't. So let's talk about how to determine somebody's motivations or what's going to incentivize them.
Yeah, I think the first thing to do is be curious, ask. I think one of the things that gets in the way is the assumptions that we might have. We might say it's obvious what their motivations are. And because we believe that it's obvious, we don't have that curiosity to even ask or inquire or investigate in some kind of way. So curiosity is one of the most powerful tools that we have at our disposal. And what's interesting is at least what I found in my experience is when a person feels very, very powerful, if you can get them to feel, it's kind of easy to get them to feel safe in the conversation because they don't feel you're a threat. And because of that, they're willing to share a lot of information, some of which is kind of disadvantageous to them. But because they don't think that you are a threat, because they don't understand or appreciate the leverage that you have, you'd be really surprised at how forthright people are with some information that is not really in their advantage to share.
Yeah. I have somebody here from Pakistan, Shafqat from Pakistan. It's so nice to see you here. Yeah, and I've never had this leverage conversation with anybody before like this. I mean, I've talked about leverage. I think in a lot of times I've sort of assumed that people know what leverage is. But I've had people say to me, well, what's the difference between leverage and blackmail?
Well, that's a really good question because I'm thinking about the cases where it might be considered blackmail. And I think it's good to take a step back as well. Because when we talk about the term blackmail, usually we're thinking about it in almost a criminal sense when somebody is
Yes,
utilizing leverage inappropriately to get you to do something and compel you against your will in an
yes,
illegal type of way. That,
correct.
as a lawyer, as lawyers, that is bad. Okay, so
Yes.
let's stipulate to that. But I think accusations of blackmail are sometimes in toxic relationships are utilized in a way to protect the person who has done something wrong from the consequences of their action. And so in that case, if it's a situation where somebody has mistreated you and they are continuing to make your life hell, and then you are trying to do whatever it is you can to make them stop, and then you say, hey, listen, if you keep on doing this, this is what I will do to protect myself, and they accuse you of blackmail, you Rebecca, are the person who knows narcissism better than anybody anybody else. That seems to be a toxic trick from a narcissist to prevent you from utilizing the tools at your disposal. So I think
The
we
way
have to
I
be.
look at it, yeah. Oh, go ahead. Finish.
Yeah, so I think we have to, the context really matters in that, because we're
Yeah.
not saying use it in an illegal type of way, but if you're utilizing the information that you have at your disposal in order to alert somebody of the consequences of their continued problematic behavior, I don't see any problem with that.
Yeah, exactly. So the way I look at it is, um, like say we're dealing with a narcissist, you use documentation, and documentation is their own behavior, right? And they do still have a choice. So blackmail would be like, pay me money, or I will send these photos of you to the press or something like that.
Right.
Whereas in a negotiation, it's more like, here's the documentation, here's your behavior, your pattern of inconsistent behavior, your pattern of non-payment, your pattern of whatever. And I will legally present this to the judge, as I have the ability to do in my case, and have the judge apply the law. Or you can avoid that conversation by resolving the issue with me here.
Exactly.
Or I'm going to depose people that I have the right to depose, as part of relevant discovery in this case. And they may or may not want you to talk to those people, but that's their choice. That's their choice. It's not an illegal situation. You're just ethically persuading the situation.
100%. And I think that's the key term, ethical persuasion, right?
Yeah.
And if somebody is trying to kind of bully you into not utilizing the tools at your disposal, then I think that by itself is an illegitimate course of action that can be ignored. And I think the key thing that you said is choice. And for me, that's the distinction between a warning and a threat. A threat is something where I'm saying, I am going to do this to you regardless. And I cannot think of one time where I have utilized or leveraged a threat in a negotiation or difficult conversation. But I am very willing to utilize warnings, which is just letting somebody know of what will occur if they continue to make certain decisions. So I say, hey, listen, I want you to be very clear on what happens if this continues. If this continues, then I will utilize my legal right to do this. So the choice is yours. You can make a decision, but I'm letting you know what happens next. And I think that's the difference between something that is illegitimate use of the tools that we're discussing today and ethical persuasion.
Yeah, so good. Somebody is saying, if it's not scripted, then please explain freedom in a single line. Okay, so what would you, yes, so we talked about what's leverage. What is freedom?
I think it's really comes down to freedom is the option for you to choose. And I want people to leave this feeling like they are the ultimate authority in their lives. They don't need permission from anybody to do those things, right? And the thing is, whenever we're having these conversations about negotiation, toxic relationships, conflict resolution, and everything, all of these decisions and strategies and tactics need to be oriented towards achieving freedom, and your version of freedom can only be determined by you. So it's not just winning, it's winning on your terms. Because if you don't give yourself permission to define freedom for yourself, then you might have society define what freedom and success is for you. And as a result, you might navigate the conversation in a way that gets you exactly where you wanted to go based on your strategy, and you achieve the outcome, which might be a horrible decision for you personally, because your version of freedom differs from what society might say freedom can or should be. So I think freedom is deeply personal, but whatever we're doing with our relationships and our negotiations, it should be oriented toward giving ourselves optionality and choice to live life on our terms.
So good. Yeah, I mean, I would say agency, right?
Yes.
Have agency, to have like you have power over your circumstances, like you have freedom to choose. And then, we're all oriented toward service and creativity, and like that's what has us aligned and aligning our personality with our soul, like having that true authentic feeling in life where you don't feel at the effect of other people, at the effect of your traumas, at the effect of your circumstances. I would say that's what freedom is. Shafkat, tell us if that aligns and feels good for you. Rajitha says, great insights. Susan Giles, hey, Sue Giles. She says, loving this. Sherry has a question for us. How do you stand out in a competitive job market? How do I leverage myself? I am currently unemployed after 12 years, feeling slightly inadequate.
Yes. And well, first of all, I think that feeling is very important. We have to address the feeling. It's both the intangible and the tangible too, because we can tell you how to position yourself, but you will be unlikely to position yourself in that way if you still let the feelings of inadequacy drive the ship. So one of the best things you can do is talk to people that you care about and who care about you, and ask what value they think you bring to the table. What are your unique characteristics? I think that's one of the underutilized values that friends have for us, is the ability to hype us up. Tell me why I'm worthy, because sometimes I might forget. And I think that's a very important part of this equation. Another thing too is I feel as though it's not just about being persuasive at the negotiation table. Like you said, we have to stand out in a competitive marketplace. I think it's creating a persuasive online avatar, which is becoming more and more important nowadays. Rebecca, you've done an incredible job building up your brand. And I think we might say, okay, well, look how Rebecca did it. She's a thought leader. I don't necessarily want or need to be a thought leader, but you can recognize that there is value in your thoughts, and you share it to the audience that you do have, whatever size that is. And I think it's important to let the world know who you are, what value you bring, and lead the conversation when it comes to the narrative around your life and the value that you bring, and share that consistently and generously.
Yeah.
I know for me with the podcast, I just wanted to share the best information possible for free. With my posts, it's the same thing. And so when you're starting to apply, you're not trying to dual resumes. People are going to Google you, and then they're going to see this track record of value that you've been putting forth on the internet. And that in itself gives you unique leverage. It takes some time, but it does work eventually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I would say all of the things, I agree with everything you just said. I would add to that, I have a saying that I live by, which is your identity precedes your destiny. And so who are you being? You don't attract what you want, you attract who you are. And in defining that for yourself, I think is so important. And I'll tell you a story. When I first started my law practice several years ago now, I had been a lawyer for about 8 years in this particular town, Naples, Florida, which is a very affluent town in Florida. And I then went to be a financial advisor with Morgan Stanley for about 2 or 3 years. And I had my Series 766 and my insurance licenses. And I thought, that's what I was going to do instead, because my daughter was young. And then I had an opportunity to take over a friend's law practice. And so, because she was moving out of town, and I thought, well, no one's ever going to drop a law practice in my lap. So let me just go ahead and go back to law. And I remember saying to my business coach at the time, oh my God, everybody in this town is going to think I'm such a flake. Like she was a lawyer, financial, now a lawyer again. Like this girl does not know what she wants. And my business coach said to me, and I'll never forget it, and I always tell people this, you talk about levers, this is such an important one. She said to me, people will think what you tell them to think. She said, you can tell them to think that you're a flake, or you can tell them to think that you're the only family law attorney now that has a financial background. So therefore, you are actually more qualified than any other attorney in town. Which story would you like to tell? And I was like, well, maybe I'll tell that one. And so that's what I did. And within 2 years, I had the top family law practice in that town, representing very, very powerful people with lots and lots of money, people who were very clearly not going to hire a flake. However, had I shown up as, oh, I'm sorry, I know I'm flaky, I sort of apologetic, not standing in my power of who I knew to be, who I knew myself to be, that's what would have happened. And so I just want everybody to know that you define who you are first, and then that's what people will see you as.
Yes, it's so powerful. And the thing is, it's so simple. And I think the simplicity of it is what makes people skeptical of it too. But it is powerful. And I realize when it comes to your personal brand, people will believe what you say about yourself unless you give them a very, very, very good reason not to believe it. And those very good reasons not to believe it usually don't come up if the story itself is true. And it's a really powerful thing because for me, when I started off the American Negotiation Institute, there were a lot of thoughts in my head that were holding me back, that were self-limiting beliefs. I think there were some legitimate strategic considerations, but I had to give myself permission to overcome them. And so it was first, there's not a lot of representation in the negotiation and conflict resolution space. And I know Rebecca, we've talked about this before as well. And then also the fact that when I started the American Negotiation Institute, I was 27 years old. And this is a field that really admires and appreciates experience as well. And so I said, okay, these things are kind of in my way. And then I said, you know what? I think the best thing for me to do is to lean into this and recognize that yes, biases do exist, but I'll take that as a strategic consideration, not a limitation. And so
Yeah, so age is a huge limiting belief that people have.
yes,
Whether it's being too old, too young, it doesn't matter. I mean, I think the KFC guy, he started KFC when he was like in his 70s or whatever it was, or 60s. I mean, I think it was Vera Wang didn't have somebody buy one of her first designs till she was like 40. I mean, and so I think age can be a massive limiting belief. And what's the saying? Like you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take, right? I mean, so if people will see your value, if you allow them to see your value,
yes.
and you have value. I mean, you are meant for great things. You are born for greatness. I mean, that's just all of us have that within ourselves. I mean, you are sourced from the divine. That means that you are born for greatness.
And
Period.
Rebecca, let's go back to something that you said, because you said it in passing, but it's extremely powerful. And I think it connects really nicely with the story, because you talked about you have to be that person. You have to have that identity in order to attract certain opportunities and certain treatments. Because I think a lot of times respect is reflective. If you can reflexive, I should say, if you carry yourself in a certain way, it kind of changes the way that people see you. And then if you can tie that to a really, really, really powerful story that is also grounded in reality and truth, then you put yourself in a position where you start to attract some of these opportunities that we might have been afraid of even going for before.
Yeah. It was interesting to me because I had this same thought when I was watching. My daughter had gone to Coachella, a couple months ago, and there were people who were performing on the Coachella stage, and they would get out there and they would sing their songs and whatever. And obviously they're mildly successful if they're on the stage at Coachella. But then Lady Gaga comes out, and she's got all her gaga-ness to it, but she defined herself as being, I'm different than everybody else on this stage. I'm next level. That didn't just come. It's not I always say it's be, do, have. It's not do, have, be. It's not, you do the work, whatever, and then you'll have the stuff and then you'll become that identity. It's the other direction. It's you have to identify that that's who you are first, and then you do the work to get there, and then you'll have those results.
Yes. And it can be really scary too. It can be very scary, especially when you don't have the results, but you're trying to be and walk in that new identity. Again, I think that's why it's so important to surround yourself with those people who can help you to reaffirm that identity sometimes when you start to lose that confidence. And I think it all ties in together as well with, with presence and the way that you carry yourself as well. These are the types of intangible things that have a very tangible impact when it comes to these conversations as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the first levers that you have to pull in order to have leverage is your identity. I remember a couple of years ago, I had been in a relationship with a narcissistic business partner, and it was actually, this was after I'd already had a very successful law practice, and what led me into doing all the work that I'm doing now. And I remember going back to my business coach, that same one, and I had said, oh, I feel like the only way that I can make money is through having a law practice. And, I'm going to have to go back to practicing law, which I don't want to really do. And she said, honey, it wasn't the law practice that made the money. It was you. It was you. You are the source. And so just understanding that who you're being is so important to what you bring into any conversation, situation, negotiation, job interview, job search, and creating, okay, this is who I am. I bring a lot of value. I bring life experience. I bring, whatever skills you might have. And I'm an asset to whatever organization I choose to be with, because I will work harder, because I care, because I have these skills, whatever it is. You have a unique ability.
Yes. This goes back to what we were actually talking about before we press live, which is the unique leverage that comes from authenticity itself.
Oh, I'm so glad you
Yeah.
brought that up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we recognize that there is value in understanding who you are, who you aspire to be, and walking in that, and not allowing people to tell you who they believe you need to be. Because if you are willing to have that, if you're able to have that confidence that comes through authenticity, then you get to a point where you're willing to accept some outcomes that you might have otherwise been afraid of, when you say, I would rather be myself than accept less in this situation. Who I am and walking in that without compromising myself is value in itself. And this is one of those things that people can sense at the negotiation table. When you are up against somebody who has a very flimsy sense of self, what you can do is you can figure out what it is that they want, and you can kind of start to manipulate that person. And when you can start to become more authentic, and you're okay with who you are, and you become more okay with the outcomes, then it gives you a lot more confidence to stand firm in the conversation.
Yeah. I see Gabriel here says, our minds are our greatest assets and can be our greatest liability. To achieve something, you first have to believe you can do it. It's about courage. You will never lose when you bet on yourself. It's so true. And I can tell you, even, having been on YouTube now for 5 years myself, I really found that my YouTube took off when I became much more authentic, much more the version of myself that I just am, rather than trying to have a persona or whatever. And, sharing, geez, I've had tough times. I've had, to negotiate with my brain first thing in the morning too. Like I always say, I can never leave my thoughts unsupervised. I think that being authentic and being your true self is what actually attracts people to you.
Yes, 100%. And again, I think when it comes to attracting people to you, you have to be the first person to love yourself first,
Yeah.
and then you start to attract the right people to you as well.
So true. So true. So that's our conversation on leverage, just understanding that there's so many different kinds of leverage, that, there's levers that you can pull in different areas of your life, starting with your own, starting with your own.
Yes.
And, um, what final words would you like to leave?
I think it's this, and this is something that I've been realizing more and more as I've shared these messages. Um, it's not. I think the value that we're bringing here is not so much in the tactical or strategic brilliance, because I think you can take what we've said and incorporate it in order to create an incredible strategic plan, great tactics at the negotiation table. But if you don't have the confidence and the courage to do what is required, then you're not going to do those things. And I say it all the time. I think in the negotiation industry, one of the challenges we've had is that we've been giving recipes to people who are afraid to get in the kitchen. And what I've realized is that so much of this, when it comes to the success in these tough conversations, so much of it has nothing to do with the tactics or strategy, but so much to do with who you are as a person. Because a lot of times the right words to say in the moment will emanate from within yourself, and they might not be what a negotiation expert would suggest to say or do under those circumstances. But you start to intuitively know how to comport yourself at the negotiation table in these tough conversations, the more you give yourself permission to be yourself and live life on your terms and orient towards freedom. If there's anything that we've talked about today, I think it's that. It's giving yourself permission to be yourself, and then the right answer often flows organically from that realization.
And even understanding that you don't need anybody else's permission either. And I always say, stop trying to make not your people your people. Some people are just not your people, and that's okay.
Ooh, that hit me hard. That hit me hard because I think a lot of times, man, gosh, that really hit me hard because for me, you know me, Rebecca, when it comes to this, I want to make the world a better place. I want everybody to get along. But there's some people who just don't want that. And I
No,
spend so much time trying to fix these people and get them on board. Why don't I just talk to my tribe a little bit more?
yes. I mean,
Yeah.
these are not the right percentages, but I had a friend one time who's like, oh, 25% of the people are going to love you, 25% of the people are going to hate you, and 50% of the people will go either way. Just focus on the 25% who love you, and that's it.
Yeah.
How many people? 7 billion people on the planet or whatever. I mean, that's plenty.
Yes, and to this point, I think this is a cool way to just be a bit vulnerable here too. Like obviously, for me as somebody who's a recovering people pleaser, there are levels. I've gotten to higher levels of this. This is great, but also you see, sometimes it comes back. It's like, no, but I want everybody to like me. But no, these people might not like the way that I said it, and I still, from time to time, I still need to remind myself, Kwame, be yourself. And that's one of the things that I've been working on here in 2025. Just saying, okay, I'm not trying to be this pristine lawyer. I'm not trying to be this idyllic negotiation expert. I'm just trying to be me. And sometimes people will vibe with that, and sometimes they won't. And it's been really cool to rediscover and at the same time recreate myself, and not try to be a better version of somebody else, but just be the most legitimate, authentic, unique version of myself, the person that I love and admire. And so I think people can learn a lot from that.
Yeah, no doubt about it, because it's greatness personified. And I can say that I absolutely adore Kwame.
Thank
I
you.
mean, seriously, it is like my pleasure in life to lift you and see you shine. And I have to tell you how I met him is because he was recommending my podcast like several years ago before I even knew him, because that's who Kwame is. He's just a good guy. He thinks from abundance. He doesn't think from scarcity. And that is, how you will let go of resistance in your life and get where you want to go. I'll tell you that right now. So I'm seeing comments like this webinar is fire, emojis. and so much needed messaging and empowerment. So good. Somebody said, "I love stop trying to make not your people." Gut checking, love it. All right, Quincy, Annette, Gabriel, everybody who's here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Kwame, for being my negotiation partner on all of this. So good. And Kay Jones said lots of pearls here. So good. I'm so glad that you were all here and joined us. Kwame and I are going to do more of these because I think it's just so good. And it's nice for both of us to talk to somebody else, and provide value for you guys. So that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about. How can we affect transformation and impact in the world? So thank you all, and we'll see you again super soon.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
God bless you all.